show of hands of anybody that came and is not eating lunch but just hanging out. And a couple hands. Check. Well, welcome everybody to the August 5th meeting of the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County. We're excited to host our school board candidate forum today. I'm sure the candidates are excited to get through these forums. You guys have been pretty busy, so appreciate everything you're doing close to Election Day. This is going to follow our traditional format. You're all going to have 2 minutes to make your opening statements, then we'll move on to the 5 questions I've prepared. And I was preparing them up until this morning, so there's absolutely no chance that they've been leaked to any candidates. I did not have this prepared until, I'm not a procrastinator, that's just how I do it. And then we'll wrap it up with 1 minute closing statements. In the interest of time, I won't be opening this up to additional questions from the audience or media afterwards, but if anybody wants to have some additional conversations with the candidates afterwards, if they're available, please feel free to do so until Sean kicks us out. Keep an eye out on Taylor Dingle. He's the gentleman right there. He's going to be our timekeeper. If he flashes the yellow folder, that's your 30-second warning. And if he holds the red up, that means you got to zip it. Before we get started, let's take a moment to honor God and country and recognize the elected officials that are here with us today. Mayor Tyson, would you please lead us in the invocation?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you again thanking you for the privilege of living in a country where we're free to come together and discuss the business of our club. We ask that you would be with us today, and that everything we say and do here will be acceptable in your sight. This morning we come to you with heavy hearts, grieving for our country. Our country is in terrible shape. We hope that the result of the elections coming up will cause our people in Washington to change their course, get us back in the direction that we need to be, and returning us to truly being one nation under God. Today we pray for our first responders, our policemen that are in some of the big cities being killed just strictly for the reason that they wear a uniform. We ask that you would be with them, give them the wisdom to make the right decision as they carry out their duties. And with the pandemic still raging, Lord, we pray for our doctors and our nurses. Give them the strength to carry out their duties and help us to finally rid ourselves of that terrible pandemic and that disease. And now as we break bread together, we ask that you would bless the food, the nourish for our bodies, bless the hands that prepared it. We ask these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mayor Tyson. And please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And of course, we appreciate the public servants that join us at the Taxpayers Association. Today we have here with us Mayor of Vero Beach and candidate for Florida House of Representatives, Robbie Brackett. I believe I saw him on the RSVP list. Vero Beach City Councilmember Bob McCabe. Did Bob make it? There he is. We have Vero Beach City Councilmember John Catugno with us today. Beloved Mayor of Fellsmere, Joel Tyson, is with us today. Fellsmere Chief of Police, Keith Touchberry. We have Indian River County Tax Collector Carol Jean Jordan is with us. And Fellsmere City Manager Mark Mathis is with us. Supervisor of Elections Leslie Swan is with us. Judge Nicole Menz. And Judge Rebecca White. School Board Member for District 1, Dr. Mara Schiff, is with us. School Board Chair, District 4, and seeking re-election, Teri Barenborg. School Board Member for District 2, also seeking re-election, Jackie Rosario. And in addition to the school board candidates that will introduce themselves momentarily, we have several other candidates seeking public offices. Linda Moore, candidate for Vero Beach City Council, is here. Anna Kirkland, candidate for mosquito control, is with us. Dorothea Mullins, candidate for circuit judge. And I believe Paul Westcott, candidate for Indian River County Hospital District. And Dr. Karen Hiltz, candidate for the Florida House of Representatives. I always ask, did I miss anybody? Oh, Joanne Benford, candidate for County Commission. And I believe Elizabeth Seeker, candidate for County Commission as well. Thank you. Hard to keep track. I should just have everybody that's not running for office stand up. Okay. So unfortunately, LaDonna Corbin had a work commitment that she couldn't get out of, so I just learned that recently. She won't be joining us today. But the rest of the school board candidates will introduce themselves with their opening statements, and we'll start off in the following order. For District 2, we'll start with Cindy Gibbs, Josh Post, and Jackie Rosario, and then Teri and Thomas will make your opening statements. So Cindy, if you'd like to get us kicked off, we'll start a 2-minute timer and look forward to hearing your opening statements. I believe it should be on. Hold that timer. Oh yeah, there's only one, so we'll have to pass that back and forth all over it.
We're going to compromise today. Good morning. My name is Cindy Gibbs. I am running for School District of Indian River County, District 2. I live in Sebastian. I taught elementary school in this district, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, usually an inclusion model classroom, which means quite a number of special education students as well as what we would consider a mainstream student. I was also one of the original Moonshot Moment Mentor tutor teachers, helped to design some of the curriculum for that program, and still a huge, huge fan and supporter of the Learning Alliance, who have done so much work to support the literacy of the children and families in our district. So I'm running for school board because I'm a parent and a former educator who still educates adults. I am lucky enough to work virtually from home. This is my lunch break. Thank you for having me. And I believe so deeply in the power of public education, the power that our community has when we all come together to recognize that power of a good quality public education. I'm a product of the system myself, and my children are there. I have a 12-year-old at Storm Grove. I have a 15-year-old starting her sophomore year at Sebastian River High School. Orientation at both schools yesterday was amazing. Getting to meet the teachers, shake their hands, see what the classrooms look like. And the buzz of all of that is always so exhilarating at the beginning of the year, whether you're a parent or a teacher or an administrator. So I look forward to sharing my opinions and ideas and thoughts and beliefs with all of you today, and I hope that you'll check me out at gibbsforschools.com. I post multiple times a day on Facebook if that's your jam and you do that kind of thing, so you can get a better feel for who I am. And I am going to have full disclosure with you right now. My daughter has a doctor appointment this afternoon, so I won't be available to chat with you after this meeting today because we know how hard it is to get a doctor appointment sometimes for our kids. But I'm more than happy to speak with you if you reach out to me through my website, and I'll even give you my phone number before I leave. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cindy.
Good afternoon, I'm Josh Post. I'm a married father of 4, married my high school sweetheart, and we have 4 children, and all graduates of Indian River County Schools, 3 from Vero Beach, 1 from Sebastian River. I have a special needs son who has autism. He's 22 and just aged out of the system this past year. He'll be starting at Indian River State College in the project stage, which is for special needs folks this year. So he's got a lot of anxiety moving forward, but we are very happy and excited for him. I was a teacher in this school district for 6.5 years. I taught at Storm Grove Middle School, taught algebra honors, geometry honors, and pre-algebra. I have very high standards. When I came to Storm Grove Middle School, we had a 68% passing rate on the algebra end of course exam. The first year we brought the school, just for me, I was the only person who taught algebra other than one other teacher, up to 88%. From that year, after the first year, every one of my students, 100%, passed the algebra end of course exam. So my standards are very high. As being a math teacher, I'm a problem solver. I'm analytical. I'm a fiscal conservative, a social conservative. I'm not for social agendas in the public school system. I think those things can be, if you choose as a parent to go that route, you have every right to do that, but that doesn't belong in the public school system. So I am definitely very conservative on that side. of the aisle. I would just tell you from my vantage point, when I hear numbers like our schools are 57% in verbal and 55% passing third grade levels for math and reading, folks, that's pathetic. I mean, seriously, it is pathetic. And so the reality is we also have to look a little bit deeper than the numbers, because you can pass with a level 3. And so, for an example, in the algebra end of course exam, you could get a 52% and get a level 3. So my concern is like my students got 5s, like 90% of them got 5s, and the other 10% got 4. Maybe I'd have one kid out of the year get a level 3. So it's important that we look deeper into the numbers.
Thank
and I'll
you,
talk more
Josh.
about that.
Appreciate it. And Jackie Rosario.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Jackie Rosario. I am a woman of faith, I am a mom, I am a teacher and administrator, and your current school board member for District 2. I am rerunning for my position to continue to do better, to make better options, make better decisions for children in our district. When I ran in 2018, I thought that you can conquer the world, make all these changes. But it really wasn't until the pandemic hit that I realized the gravity of the decisions that a school board member makes on the lives of children in our county and how it affects their families. And so really in the first 2 years of being a school board member, we went through 3 superintendents and then was hit with the pandemic and the shutdowns and the mask mandates and all that other kind of stuff. So now it's time to really get back to work. It's time to put the pedal to the metal and really hold our superintendent accountable for the new strategic plan that we have in place, reaching those targets and setting those limits and those expectations high. I am a mom of a 14-year-old going on 41. If you all have a teenager, you know what that is like. He is a sweetheart and he is the best campaign manager in the world. He comes along with me on several of these meet and greets and forums. So give him a high five when you see him. Recently, I was endorsed by Governor Ron DeSantis, which is a wonderful honor for me. I am the common sense conservative voice on the school board, and I am really with a focus of putting students first and championing parental choice and parental rights. So on August 23rd, I hope that you would vote for me, Jackie Rosario, as your school board member for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
I don't want you to take that.
Hi everyone, I'm Teri Barenborg. My husband Ed and I came here in 1986 to visit my parents and fell in love with the place. We moved here soon after from Houston, Texas, and raised our children here. So it was our plan A. And 3.5 decades later, here I am. So I have been teaching for 38 years, still teach. I've been a principal, assistant principal. I've co-written 8 books on STEM. My passion has been working with children. I have been a big sister, been a Cub Scout leader, Girl Scout leader, you name it in this town. If it involved children, I wanted to help. And I'm still doing that to this day because I truly believe children need an advocate in their corner. And having been in the education system and also a parent of 3 children who graduated through our schools and now went out in the world and came back because they want to raise their kids in this town. I have a true passion for making sure that all children get the rights that they deserve to a really, really good education. And you're right, we are not there. And we need to really work hard to make sure that our kids graduate from the best schools so when they walk across that stage, that piece of paper that they're handed means something. And it's not just a piece of paper and say good luck in the world. It means that they learn something, either career and technical education, or they're ready for college. They're ready for the world. And that's what I believe in. And I think, keeping political agendas out of the classroom, having teachers teach the standards, and making sure teachers get support is what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Hi, my name is Thomas Kenny, and I am running for school board candidate, District 4. I am a small business owner and a citizen advocate in this county. And as I've been to school board meetings and different things, I became someone who realized that there needs to be common sense citizen advocacy in education. My wife of 27 years, Angela, is here. Go ahead, stand up. When we were asked to run, and I say we, I was asked to run by certain members of the community that said, you have a really good perspective on these things. And I said, okay. I went to Angela, and we really thought about it deeply. And we said, we want to serve this community. We came down in 2014, moved here on a job that I was working on. And we just love Indian River County. And so with that, our family has moved here, her mom and dad, my mother has moved here. And so we've been able to just really settle in as a family and see what is important in this county. My campaign has been endorsed by the Republican Hispanic Assembly. It's been endorsed by the former chairman of Blexit in Florida, La Sierra Maslin, who's currently running for State House 13. And my first and foremost thing is parental rights. Parental rights is the most important aspect of governance for a school board and its school system to be effective. Because of the transparency that is required with parents and students and teachers, education becomes first. And that's what I want to do. So go to votethomaskenny.com, and I look forward to your vote on August 23rd.
Thank you, Thomas. If you could pass the mic down to Josh, he'll be up first on this next question, followed by Jackie, Teri, Thomas, and Cindy. The first question is, the Florida legislature recently passed a bill that will allow military veterans and their spouses who may lack a college degree to serve as teachers in our public schools. Some have expressed concern, stating this lowers the bar for educators. Please share your thoughts. Do you approve or disapprove of this legislation, and how do you think it might impact our local school system?
I approve of the legislation. I think it's a great idea. I do think that they need to probably look and add, if they don't have the degree in the area that they're teaching, that they could take the courses in the meantime, to get that certification, to get that degree, etc. They can get the certification, which technically should allow you to teach. But, we do want teachers that have a college degree in order to, get in front of folks, students, and teach. So I think you could probably make that a little bit better by, having some type of program along with that so that they would be able to get that degree moving forward. I think it'd be great for this community. The reality is military teaches discipline. And so to me, one of the big things that we have a problem in our school district is significant discipline problems. Things that are covered up, that are behind the scenes that people don't want to know, that they don't want the public to know about. And so you think about the fight that happened at the Flick last year, okay? 6 fights all at one time. Parents knew about it, students knew about it. Kids were not allowed to be suspended from school unless it was approved by the district. So the administrators that I've talked with have said to me, I want to suspend this kid, but I have to get it approved by the district. Well, so the action could have occurred on Monday, and then on Thursday they decide, yeah, I'm going to suspend this kid. Hello, what are we teaching these kids? That they can do whatever they want, and that's what's the problem. We have a significant discipline problem. And the reality as we move forward is if that doesn't get figured out, the education part is what's going to suffer. So I would encourage you to look beyond the statistical data that the district puts out. It is extremely important that you don't just take it as face value, because data can always be changed and modified to fit the narrative that you want it to be. So I would encourage all of us as we go forward with this scenario of bringing people into our district that have military experience, that discipline could be significant. And discipline is not, necessarily, a physical punishment. It is actually that learning, that thought process.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, we have a career path for people who want to come into the school districts with vocational and technical training. And so I don't think that it should be any different for military. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think that I support legislation for this purpose. If you have a career focus and your work experience can translate into the classroom, why not? I know that there's a certain amount of time in which they are expected, once hired, to then go back to school or to take some of these coursework that is usually given to teachers in training for certification, which really just kind of covers things like lesson planning and pedagogy, things of the sort that really help teachers within the classroom. But they can learn that as they go if they're mentored, if you have a good assistant principal, if you have someone else who is a senior teacher, coming alongside of them. They can learn that as they go and still take the coursework that is needed at the end of their, whenever they take it, at the end of the day or in the evening or on weekends. But once they get that certification, I think it would be really pleasurable for the students, and certainly an opportunity to learn from someone else who is in the work field, a military person, of course, someone civic-minded who puts America first. That can only benefit our students. So I'm 100% on board.
All right, thank you. I think that this is the legislature's answer to helping us solve the teacher shortage problem. So when I went to UF's graduation a few years ago when my kids were graduating, I saw hundreds of graduates in the education department. I went back recently when my niece was graduating, and I saw a handful in the education department. So we have a serious lack of teacher shortage in this country, especially in Florida. And so I think this is a great idea to find another way to be able to help us to find people that are willing to be in the classroom and willing to learn. And it gives them a second chance at a career, which I think is wonderful. We have a lot of supports in place. I was one of those people that went and supported teachers. I'm doing it actually right now. They've got a new teacher that came to our district that needs that help. And so that help can be lots of varied ways of helping with classroom management, helping with understand the standards, helping understand how to interpret and instruct. And those are things that we're already doing for other people. So I think it's great that the legislature found a way to help us, again, find more people to be willing to come into the classroom. We're close to hiring everybody. I ask that question every single day. We're not quite there yet. We're very, very close. And I think this is another way to be able to solve that problem. But I think, asking military vets to come in is wonderful, because think of the experience that they have that they can bring to the classroom.
I really like this idea, just to address that teacher shortage. And the reason is in the state of Florida, 9,000 shortage across all 67 counties. In Hillsborough, for example, they had a 700 teacher shortage. They're trying to staff half of that with administrators to get their school year started. So this is something that is statewide. Here we're not as in such a grave predicament. So it's really good. My education background, when I went back to school and finished my degree, I was able to take my personal experience and apply it. And I was able to have a degree tailored to what I did professionally in media. And George Mason University does this with students every day. And so this is something too, you get a lot of military people who have like specific engineering backgrounds in electronics because they worked on planes and ships and all these different things. They do a lot of technical work in the military, especially in the age of computer systems. And so to bring that knowledge and say, hey, what is your strength? What is your area? Let's get these kids moving towards what you already know, and bring that experience in and get them certified along the way. I think it's a great idea, and I'm all for it.
Thank you, and if you could pass the mic down to Cindy.
I absolutely support any innovative idea to get people into our classroom to educate our children. If it's the military, if it's a second career, whatever it is, I absolutely support that. I'm a second career teacher. I've had all kinds of different jobs, but I went back to school and got my master's in education and my teaching certification when I was 30. And I had a lot of life experience before that. So although I don't have military experience, I do appreciate the idea of coming into the classroom with a whole different worldview than maybe someone who graduated from college at 21 or 22 with just an education degree. Not that that's a bad thing, but a whole worldview of things that outside of just a college classroom. So absolutely, anything we can do. I think this legislation is a good idea. I do have some concern as a former classroom teacher myself, and maybe other teachers in the room will think this as well. It's been mentioned by everyone else that we absolutely need to make sure that anyone who has a non-education background as they come into the classroom is brought up to speed. There are standards we need to meet. People go to school for 4, 6, 8, 12 years to advance their education degrees, and we don't want to minimize that for the teachers that we already have in place. I do think that this is an opportunity in our schools to increase mentorship programs. I think people, especially newer teachers, it would be great to have perhaps an older person in their department who has traveled the world in the military and has lots of other work experience, as Thomas mentioned. That would be an amazing partnership for teachers to get to work together and to get different ideas from each other. And as we're working through this new process, because this is new, it's not a whole new view. I mean, we've had second career teachers brought in 17 years ago when I started in this district. There were people coming in who were just taking the subject area exam to become teachers here without an education degree. Having our administrators, our school administrators, push into the classrooms to make sure that our new teachers, our career military second career teachers, are all up to speed and know exactly what needs to happen in the classroom to best educate our kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Jackie, you'll be first on this next question. I'm going to talk really loud because I think my mic just went. Jackie, and then followed by Teri, Thomas, Cindy, and Josh. If elected, what actions would you take or like to see taken to resolve the decades-old desegregation order? To the best of your knowledge, what still needs to be done to reach unitary status, and what are the major obstacles that have kept us from getting there already?
I think that is a really loaded question that might take longer than the time allotted. But I will say that we have worked really, really hard to get us to where we are right now. As of March, when we went back to court, we were in agreement that all of the areas were satisfied with the exception of 2. That those 2 areas would be teacher mentorship of Black and brown teachers, and then the other one was student achievement. And so those 2 areas were areas that were agreed upon when we went to court the last time. And then also what was agreed upon was a change from the equity committee, which was in place the last 2 years. The equity committee would now be replaced with a group called the Achievement Gap Work Group. The Achievement Gap Work Group would work slightly different than the equity committee, and that would look at the achievement gaps between the subgroups together as a community, and then kind of address how to close those achievement gaps. So we do have achievement gaps within different subgroups between Black and white students, and then between other subgroups. But this work group was intended to replace that equity committee, a little confusing there, so that the work can begin now and continue some years after we reach unitary status. So I am of the mindset that I believe that we will reach unitary status. I think it's very, very important that we continue to work collaboratively with the NAACP so that we can satisfy those 2 areas. We have made improvements with student achievement, but we certainly are not where we need to be. So it's hard to predict when that will happen, but I think that we are well on our way to making that a reality.
Thank you very much.
Well, that work group actually is formed as a partnership between the school district and the NAACP, and there has been a commitment, a renewed commitment, and to really make this work. And I think you're going to see some action here in the next year. This has been going on for years and years and years, and there are only a few districts in the state of Florida still under DSEG. There are districts that have gone under DSEG and then gotten off it and slipped farther behind than we are. So we don't want to see that happen. Once we get unitary status, we want to be able to continue to work towards all children having high achievement. And yes, you talk about achievement gaps and closing achievement gaps, but we can't forget about those students that maybe are bored in the classroom and need that extra challenge, and those top kids. And we can't just worry about the low kids all the time. We have to think about all the other kids. So that's always a concern that we have. We've been able to get a lot of those areas covered with hiring practices. We have at this time 12% African American teachers hired, and that is pretty good. We've satisfied the district's DSEG order except for one area, which is one campus just lost a teacher this week. So once we get that done, I think we're in good shape there. We have really worked hard to make sure that we're moving in a positive direction, not spending more taxpayer dollars on attorney fees and on lawsuits. And the goal is to make sure that we're spending money wisely. We've got a $360 million budget, and we're responsible as a board to make sure that every penny is spent correctly and for the betterment of all children, not wasting it with lots of lawsuits. And for the judges in the room, sorry about that.
I think the biggest issue with this is the achievement gap. It's education first. It's always that, and it will always be that. If the students aren't performing, you know, the teachers are having difficulty trying to help them to perform, because maybe there's discipline issues all throughout the schools and different things like that, then these achievement gaps won't be met. This is a statewide issue, but it's also a local issue here, of course. We're just a reflection of what's going on in the state, and it's the most important thing in my view. So I think one of the things that has to happen in terms of just overall achievement in the classroom is creating an internal environment that makes education first, and then raise that up. We do have the order, we do have the work group that has just been resolved here between the NAACP and the school district. And so there's a lot of collaborative effort. So now it's time to just go into the school and raise these achievement levels to where they need to be. And that's all boats. You know, the number one achievers in our school, if we just look at it from race, are the Asians, and then Caucasian, and Hispanic, and then Black. But everyone should be up. A 50% reading level is not good overall. It's just not. And so that's a reflection across all racial groups. And so we need to raise that up, and that's where I'll be focused.
So as a former classroom teacher who taught all kids, regardless of what they look like, their families, where they came from, and I like to use the word family. We talk a lot about parent engagement, but anyone in the room who's been in a classroom lately knows that we don't always have parents in place. Sometimes we don't even have families in place. Sometimes we have students, often, probably 300 or so kids in our district are living on somebody else's sofa. The new parent forms that are out as a result, and I'm grateful for this, of the parental rights legislation that's gone through. There's 11 pages that our parents now have to fill out digitally on our school system website. And I appreciate those because it gives the opportunity for our district immediately to know where our children are living, what their economic status is, and who they're living with. And I think that's incredibly important. I know it can be sometimes controversial to think that we have to look at these different subgroups separately, but really we have to have the data in place to start to make, or to continue to make, really the changes that need to happen. And I liked what Thomas said about, yeah, all boats will rise if we continue to have, that was interesting, the high expectations for all of our children. And I don't want any of you in the room to think that we ever have subgroup children sitting at a table together being raised up by themselves. That's not how it looks. When you're in a classroom, high quality education, high quality teachers have invisible grouping. They have examined the data. They have the appropriate instructional materials where we have our children learning together in a way that is completely invisible when done correctly. How does that happen? Really good high quality professional development. Making sure that our teachers have the tools and the policies in place so that they understand exactly what needs to happen to reach these goals. It's absolutely doable. And I ask all of you as community members, consider that whether you have children in school right now, the school is also your responsibility, right? We know as taxpayers, we're paying for the pleasure of having public education, but we can also as community members contribute to our local schools and help to raise the expectations for our children.
Cindy.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things that is a major obstacle, obviously, is Teri had mentioned you lose one teacher, now you're under the veil of what we're trying to get to, which is higher than 12%. So I think one of the things that I would focus on is making sure we have two very strong historical Black universities in this state, Florida A&M University and Bethune-Cookman University. So I think we have to do a great job of actually going there, telling people we need you and we want you in our school system. So that's one thing. If you want to get rid of the DSEG order and keep it away, like Teri had said, some other county has slidden back and is now back on it. So I think we have to do a better job of making sure that we are actually reaching out to the community and trying to get the folks in here to get rid of this, 55-year issue that we have. I want to talk a little bit about the African American Achievement Plan. And we talk about we want to raise the standard, we want to get all these things lifted up, but there's some things that you need to look into that and read into that pretty carefully. And one of the things that it says is that off the baseline of 2019-2020, we want to reduce suspensions by 75%. So let me give you a scenario. I'm at Strong Grove Middle School, I'm at my lunch, and I go to use the restroom, and I break up a fight of 5 boys in the restroom. I take 2 boys up, I take them to the office. The 3 ran out, but we have cameras, so somebody's going to be able to see those kids and whatnot. I go back to my desk at my lunch, and I start to write an ODR, which is an office discipline referral. Here's what I get. I get a call from an administrator. Hey, don't write them up. I took care of that. So when we have this discipline issue, what we're going to have is unintended consequences. We don't want to suspend kids. So what ends up happening is the kids know they can get away with a lot more stuff. And that's why we're having the discipline issues that we have. So the process of what we've been doing over the last 5 to 7 years with discipline, it's just kind of putting it on its own wheel. We have to be careful of that.
Thank you, Josh. Teri, you'll be up first on this next question, followed by Thomas, Cindy, Josh, and Jackie. Roughly 47% of our property tax bills are spent funding the Indian River County school system. It's a significant expenditure for our taxpayers. Do you believe any of the school board's current expenditures are wasteful or could be handled more efficiently? If elected, what would you do to ensure that we get a good educational value for our tax dollars?
Brought a visual aid. So this is our current book, and if you'd love to look through it, it's very entertaining and also informative. When I first got on the board, we had some serious financial problems. We had a chief financial officer that left, and we had an intern. So we've hired Mr. Fagan, who's done an outstanding job of getting us righted on the ship. We've been able to get our fund balance up. We've been able to take care of a lot of things. So one thing that I will tell you about your property taxes, just so you know, because they are going up and everybody's blaming us, is your property values drive that up. And we have not raised them. The school board has not raised your millage rate. We haven't done any of that. We are told what we have to put out there for our taxes. And interestingly enough, we don't get that tax money back until Carol Jane, your office, gives us that nice check. And yeah, and the problem is we have that little bit of time between a month and a half where we still have to pay salaries. And so we have that little gap. And unfortunately, that costs us, this year, it's going to cost us, if we have to go out for a TAN, which is a tax anticipation note, it's going to cost us an assistant principal pay. So it's one more person that we lose because the money goes up to the state and doesn't return to us until in November. And so we have that little gap in there that we have to cover. And that costs us money, and then we have to go out and get a loan, and then that costs us more money. So we're actually losing money just for that reason alone. That's why I have conversations with our legislators about that. This book right here has to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb by the board members. It's our responsibility to ask questions. I saw no money in here, no budget for fine arts, and I brought it up in the last workshop. How come we don't have band in here, orchestra, nothing? They fund themselves. That's great for high school because they do fund themselves, but the middle school programs have nothing. And so that question was asked. Where are we with that? So there are a lot of questions that happen behind the doors.
Thank you, Teri.
But that one I brought up out of the doors.
Fiscal responsibility is one of the most important things. 47% of your taxes. So for example, and I'll just bring this up, it's sometimes the elephant in the room of school systems these days. We have the Climate Committee, which was originally put forth to deal with the desegregation order. And it has been moved by vote for mental health. Now at a business business meeting, not a business meeting, I'm sorry, a superintendent workshop. The presentation was made by the climate committee in regards to mental health and what we need to do and all these different things. And it was brought up, well, what's the research locally in the county to make these determinations? And they said, well, we went around our 15 committee members with index cards. We asked for their top 3 things. Mental health was number 1. That's not research. There are national statistics that were mentioned, but nothing local. If we have a mental health issue, we need to look at it. So things start getting top heavy on the marketing of stuff. They've asked for $14.5 million based on an index card. So these are types of things, you know, we get emotionally involved. Mental health, it's very important. But education is more important. And we do have great mental health services in this community. We have a hospital that has a whole mental health facility. And so the first thing that happens with mental health, in my view, is the parents are made aware of what's going on with their child or their children or whatever, and they make a plan, and then we support them, and we stay with education.
And if you could pass the mic down to Cindy, please.
So as a former classroom teacher who paid for many of the things in that classroom with my own money, this is very important to me as well. I'm a taxpayer in the county. I have 2 kids in the school. I just spent about an hour and a half in Target yesterday spending $175 on school supplies for my children. I'm not in the classroom anymore, thank goodness, because that cost me $5,000 to $6,000 a year out of my own teacher paycheck pocket to make sure that my students had everything they need. Classroom library, bulletin board things, all the beautiful things you see in your children's classrooms, teachers pay for those things. The hard items, you know, the desks and the computers and stuff like that, of course that's where your tax dollars go, you know, when it gets disseminated out into the schools. But the beautiful things, the creative things that you see in our schools, they get there because teachers pay for them. So when we're talking about what things cost in a district, there's some hidden costs, right? And of course we are all responsible for a lot of those things, but I'm always going to go back to, as a parent, as an educator, relationships. And in our schools, they cost money, right? We have to be able to pay our teachers well. We do have to pay our mental health professionals in our schools well. They're responsible for the well-being of every child in our community. Now, moving on to the next thing in that same area, we want to make sure that our kids are well educated enough that when they graduate from college or they finish their trade school, they want to come back here and grow our economy by bringing industry into this area. We don't have a whole lot of that, right? We have services, we have lots of services, but we're not building a whole lot here. And with better education, money spent now will help us in our future with our children and their children. Thank you.
Well, the district has been much more transparent on the financial side over the last few years, and that is a significant plus. As a former teacher, when we had a scenario where they sent an email out to everybody about 5 years ago and said, hey, your health insurance is going to be going up, you know, $165 a month because we've messed up, basically. So the fact that it is more transparent is beautiful. I love that. So that's a great thing. I think for me personally, I'd look at the number of high-paid people at the district, see how many we have, look at those to see, are there any unnecessary jobs in those high-level positions? You know, I look at it from, you know, maybe one person that works at the district could be 2.5 teachers, things of that nature, or a teacher and an assistant in the classroom. So I think you have to look at it from a math perspective and see, you know, what are you getting for your value? So that would be one area that I would definitely focus on. That being said, 47%, that's a lot. I get it. But strong schools beget strong communities. And the reality as we go forward is if our students, you know, there's a graduation thing the other night that was said, oh, we've improved graduation rates. I don't care about graduation rates, to be quite honest with you, because you can graduate and not know anything, and that's a pretty scary thing. I just tutored a student, a geometry student. She got all A's the 9 weeks. She took the geometry end of course exam. She got a level 1. She had all A's. If we're just passing kids, having a graduate doesn't really mean a lot to me. 'Cause, you know, there's a graduation thing the other night that was said, oh, we've improved graduation rates. I don't care about graduation rates, to be quite honest with you, because you can graduate and not know anything, and that's a pretty scary thing. I just tutored a student, a geometry student. She got all A's the 9 weeks. She had all A's. If we're just passing kids, having a graduate, can they come out into our society and can they function? Can they support themselves so that they don't become a drain on society but actually flow back into society? Those are the things that we have to, as a Vero Beach, Indian River County, Sebastian, everywhere, Fellsmere, we have to focus on these kids actually that they are learning so that they will want to come back here. Because if they got a poor education, they're not going to want to come back to this community.
Thank you, Josh. And Jack.
Okay, first I'd like to just say that when I first became a board member in 2018, our finances were dismal. We were pretty much in the red in very easy user term language. But with the bringing in our chief financial officer, Mr. Fagan, and with his wisdom and how he has managed that department, it has really come around full circle. So I have these numbers from Mr. Fagan, our Chief Financial Officer, in 2021 and 2022 school year. 2021 to 2022 school year, our local taxes were 65%, right? Our state taxes were 35%. Moving into this next school year, 2022 to 2023 school year, we're expected to be at 69% of our funding, which is based on local taxes, and 31% on state-generated taxes. So that is a difference of 4% of increase because of our property taxes, right? Because our home value or our property values have increased, and so that's where the difference comes from. One of the questions that was raised is how can we be good? How can we make good educationally value for our tax dollars? There's a few things that I wrote down here that I'd like to just address. We need to make sure that our tax dollars are going for classroom-related instruction, so that it is student-focused and that it is raising student achievement. I'd like to see our tax dollars address curriculum, standards-driven instruction, make it family-focused, citizen-driven with complete transparency. One of the things that we didn't do, and I thank Josh for bringing this up, we did not have a real transparent process in 2018, and now we do. Everything is located on our website.
Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Taylor's
See
the
you
bad
later.
guy. I'm just looking at
That's
his.
okay.
All right, appreciate it. Thomas, you're going to be up first on this next question, followed by Cindy, Josh, Jackie, and Terry. It's kind of a long question, two-part question. This winter, spring, all districts in Florida will be reviewing and selecting new social studies curriculum packages to purchase for the 2023-2024 school year. As a school board member, would you plan to participate in that process? The National Council for the Social Studies promotes contextualizing LGBT+ history within the social studies, and many academic publishers approved by the Department of Education are incorporating LGBT+ inclusive topics into their curriculum. Do you believe it's appropriate or important that our curriculum includes academic discourse about these inclusive topics?
I will be reading everything. History is a passion of mine. Social studies is a passion of mine. You can't go into my house without seeing a history book. And so, yes, I will be participating fully. I think American history is not taught well. You know, one of the things with CRT, and I was talking to Drew Montez Clark, he's running for Congress in District 20. He says, you know, a lot of times, he goes, he doesn't believe in CRT, he's not an advocate for it or anything. He says, but what happens is these kids, they go to school, they learn one thing, they go home, they learn the context differently. You know, one of the things that's not taught is the profound impact of the abolition movement and how it reestablished the fundamental liberties in our founding documents. Frederick Douglass, who spent a year and a half studying the Constitution because the abolitionists understood. Elijah Lovejoy, who was martyred, one of the founding fathers of Occidental College in Ohio. Theodore Weld, Catherine Weld leaving her family because she did not agree with their slave owner mentality, and married an abolitionist and Theodore Weld, and they were just
great advocates. There are such great stories. If there are LGBTQ contributions to this story and this fabric, sure, why not? But it's not the important thing. None of it is the important thing of who they are physically and all this different stuff. What's important is the American education and why we are free today. That's the most important thing. And when you read American history, you realize the struggles of people trying to express that in the onslaught of culture.
Thank you, Thomas. And Cindy, you're up next.
So regarding the first portion of the question, the social studies adoption, just so we're all clear, because not everybody's in on the scoop of how this works. Every 6 years, districts have the opportunity to adopt a new series of whatever the particular subject area is. So last year we did the ELA reading textbooks, or 2 years ago, then it was the math textbooks. Now we're moving into social studies and the history texts and things like that. So this isn't new. It's something that continues to happen all the time. And there is a process in place where there are committees, people asked to be on them or they're appointed to them, they review the materials, and it's all done in the sunshine. Everybody knows what's happening. The process is all on the district website through the Florida DOE. So, of course I want to be a part of that. One of my favorite things of when I was teaching 4th grade was the Florida History Unit, where we talked about all of the changes in Florida, from Native Americans, Native Floridians, through all of the different explorers that came to visit and all that sort of thing. We need to know all of it. Regarding the LGBTQ plus community, please be aware that that's not going to be a conversation about sexuality. That's going to be a conversation about who are the historical figures in these groups of people, just like we talk about who are the notable African Americans, who are the notable Latino people. Not that being gay is a race, but it's a subset of our culture, and it's important to recognize that we have different kinds of people. We don't have to agree with what everybody does, but we do have to learn to think critically. And we want our children to do that. And of course we want them to agree with what we think at home, but we're not making replicas of ourselves, right? We have children so that they can grow up and learn and be critical thinkers on their own. I want you to also know that Florida Writes is still a thing. It's a writing assessment that all of our students do from 4th grade on. And in many cases, they are presented with opinion pieces that they then have to read and process on their own and write an opinion piece about. And these are the kinds of things that might be content for our kids. We all have to be good communicators. We don't always have to agree with the things we're communicating about, but we have to be good, strong, critical thinkers.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, anybody up here is going to say no, it just shouldn't even be running for school board, right? So of course I would participate in the social studies books that are coming forward. I would just say this, that anything that'll separate students, put them on two different sides, social agendas, I'm totally against. So I think what we have to be very careful of is all these social agendas are designed to really separate people. And what we want to do as a community, of our community, number one, and number two, as the educational side, is if we're going to raise the bar, which is what we need for our students, then we need them to be on the same page too. So it's extremely important to recognize, and I agree with Cindy, I would absolutely 100%, when you talk about historical sides of things, we have to talk about history, so it doesn't repeat. I mean, if we didn't talk about what the Germans did to the Jews, hello? So we do have to talk about these things. So for me as a Christian, I'm not on the LGBTQ side. But if we're going to talk about just history part of it, then I think we have to be able to acknowledge that there's a history here. Now, if we're talking about the social emotional learning, that's a totally different topic. So I think we have to be very careful when we look at these things, is what detail that the books have, and what, as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., our responsibility is. So it's not just me reading the book and any of the other members of the school board, but you should also be able to look at this material as well. And you have the ability to do that. It's open to the public. So we can't just focus on, we don't want this, without actually going through it ourselves and being able to say, hey, Josh, on page so-and-so, this has a concern for me. I'd be willing to take that call. We can have dialogue around that.
And Jackie, you're up next.
So I'm gonna focus on what our standards are. If we're supposed to be a standards-based district, then we need to stick with the standards and not teach anything outside of the standards. That's where we get ourselves into trouble. If our standards are focused on social studies and civics, and they are the mindset behind the creation of social studies and civics focuses on the Declaration of Independence, American history, African American history, Holocaust education, civics literacy, U.S. Senate youth programs, patriot programs, and yes, even studying the Bible and religion as history. Those are the focus areas for social studies and for civics-minded curriculum regarding the standards here in Florida. LGBTQ is not part of the standards, so if you go on CPOMS, you do not see anything related to LGBTQ in the underneath our standards, our educational standards. Whether you agree with it or not is a different subject, but is a different conversation. But they're not embedded within the curriculum or within the allowable, teachable topics that we should have in the schools. And so that's where I think we are kind of mixing apples and oranges with the social aspect and the political climate of our world today, is that the society and culture says, well, we should be talking about blah, 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 but, you know, blah, blah, blah is not a part of the standards that have been approved by our Florida Department of Education. So we have to stick with the standards so that we can, first of all, safely protect our teachers from being accused of teaching things that they're not supposed to teach, and then secondly, be able to ensure that we are giving students the instruction that they need in order to obviously pass the tests that are required of them for success in life as they graduate. The next thing I'm going to say is we also have a Parents' Bill of Rights in education that was just recently passed that says that for grades 1 through 3, you shall not teach certain subjects, so we have to be careful to abide by the law.
Got it. And Teri?
All right, thank you. All right, so interestingly enough, when we do these adoptions of textbooks, they happen every 6 years so that we stay current. Because believe it or not, what you learned when you were in school is different than what kids learn. There's been history between when you were in 3rd grade and now in 3rd grade. So we have to vet these books very carefully. The way it's done, I've been on the state adoption committee for science, so I know exactly how it's done as far as science goes. They form a committee across the state. That committee looks at the books the same time the districts are looking at the same books and materials. And then the committee just makes a recommendation to the DOE, and then it's approved or not approved. And then those books are put on a list, and school districts cannot purchase anything that's not on those lists. We learned our lesson with ELA, and now with math. I believe that it's right to wait 1 year after the state does it. So this year the state will be looking at the social studies books. They will be vetting them and making sure that they hit the standards, making sure that they hit exactly what they need to hit and don't have anything in there that they shouldn't. And then after we get that list is when we then as a district would be able to do that. You don't have to adopt books the same year as the state is looking at them. You can adopt them the next year. As far as the second half of that, we need to teach acceptance, not indoctrination. Acceptance of all of our history, good, bad, and ugly. And we have increased civics. This year we've increased financial literacy, which is great. And we've increased U.S. history. That came across too. So I think that making sure that we follow the law is very, very important. And just as far as where board members can look at books, we can't participate in board committees. We could not go to that committee and vote. We cannot, there were certain committees that we cannot be in the room with. And so, just so you know, we can pull those books just like anybody else can because they're in our lobby of our district office. So we pull those books and we look at them and we determine, but people help us, tell us what it is that we need to see.
Thank you, Teri. Our last question, it's going to be Cindy, Josh, Jackie, Teri, and Thomas. What issues do you believe our district needs to address in its academic programs and offerings? What changes would you recommend or like to see implemented if elected?
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. What issues do you believe our district needs to address in its academic programs and offerings? And what changes would you recommend or like to see implemented if elected?
Just want to make sure I got it right. So I think one of the most important things to recognize is that our teachers are already the professionals, right? I mentioned earlier, they are already the academic experts because they went to school for this. To use an example, I'm going to take my daughter to the pediatrician in a little while. She's the expert. I take my child to the doctor because the doctor knows more about health and wellness than I do. I mean, of course, I know my kid better than she does. Well, maybe not much. She was there when she was born. But I trust her expertise. And there is this wave in our community and all across the country that teachers might not be the experts anymore. But they still are. And the way you get to know that is to create relationships. If you still have kids in school, grandkids in school, nieces and nephews, whatever, our families still need to create relationships with those teachers. Now, to continue with that, to make sure that people are all up on their certification and that they are doing best practices in classrooms, we need high-quality professional development that is targeted to what our teachers need. Too many of our teachers, for example, special areas, a music teacher should not be sitting in a social studies teacher development course, but sometimes it happens. They should be working on their fine arts section, right? Just like when these new textbooks come next year for social studies, our social studies and history teachers need to have the time to be respected enough to have the time to sit together and learn how to plan that curriculum together to be the most effective for our students. So my major concern, in addition to all kinds of other major concerns, right, but to answer that question, is to make sure that our teachers are given the time and the space, the materials, and the respect that they deserve as our educators to make sure that our children are getting all of the materials that they need to succeed. Thanks.
Thank you. Discipline and structure is going to be the first thing that I think we have to really focus on in the district. If there's no discipline in the classroom, there's no learning that's happening in the classroom. When I started teaching, my football coach was the dean of students, and he said to me 26 years ago, he said, you cannot allow one student to disrupt the learning of another student. And I use that as an educator. And that's how we have to go forward. We cannot allow one student, regardless of whatever the classification, low income, minority, it doesn't matter, disrupt others from learning. And so I think we have to recognize moving forward, teacher morale is terrible. It's low. It has caused, the discipline issues have caused early retirements, people that were going to do drop, and they're like, I'm going to put my 5 years into drop, and now they're not doing drop because they're ready to get out. Or teachers 1, 2, 3 years, they're doing their 1, 2, 3 year period, they're out. So moving forward, we have to recruit, train, and give teachers what they need for whatever that is. For some, it may be classroom management. For some, it might be lesson planning. I have a son who's in his 3rd year teaching in this district. He is in that mentorship program. It's fantastic. He has a what I would call a seasoned teacher that works with him, helps him. They work together, collaborative planning. I mean, these are good things. We have to have more family involvement. If the family is not involved, the students don't perform. I taught high level, medium level, and low level. In my high level classes, we'd have open house. 23 to 25 parents would show up. The 2 that didn't would call me or email me and say, I got to work that night, I can't be there. On the low level side, 2 of the 25 parents would show up. No contact from anybody. If education isn't important, that's what we see.
Thank you, Josh. And Jack.
Okay, I think that with regard to academics, there are several areas that I would like for us to focus on and improve on. But I think one of the first things that we need to address are the library books that have pornographic content in them, and we just need to get them out of the libraries. There's no need for them to be there. They have no academic quality to them, no scientific base. We just need to get them out. So that's number one. Then the other thing that we need to focus on is teacher support. Really freeing the teachers up from some of the required hallway duties or bus duties, or if we can reduce some of the classes that they have to cover, unless it's an emergency, of course, so that they can get back into the classrooms and really focus on classroom lesson preparation and being with their students. I think that would be an incredible support. Another area of support for our teachers would be in student discipline, obviously. So if we can support teachers with the discipline issues and discipline students according to the behavior, not according to their race, then we would be on the right track to really addressing some of these issues. If we can get deans into schools, I've been a very big proponent of deans. Deans of discipline can really help address just the discipline issues alone and free up our assistant principals for getting to get into the classrooms and support teachers who support our students. So I think that we need to get deans in. With discipline, I think we need to work on bullying. Bullying has been a huge issue lately. If we can get rid of the cell phones, I'd love to get rid of the cell phones altogether. But bullying is it's rampant, and it's just terrible. It happens off of campus, it comes into campus, and that adds fuel to the fire with regard to the discipline issues that happen on the campus. And sometimes they're so subtle, you can't really, they're intangible. But we definitely need to work on those areas, and so much more that I'd like to tell you afterward.
Thank you. Teri?
Yeah, the question was about academic program changes, right? Okay, because I saw us going off on another tangent. Cursive. You know, it amazes me how many kids don't know how to sign their name on a check or wherever. But I was helping a teacher yesterday in a classroom, and I came upon an Amplify book, and I went, oh my gosh, Amplify has cursive in it. I was so excited to see it. So cursive's coming back. Financial literacy is something that I talked about a little bit. Kids will be able to learn how to balance a checkbook and take care of things and learn about mortgages and how to buy a car and things like that. Career and technical education. Always expand on that. I was able to open this morning's back to school welcome for all our employees. And one slide I showed up there was thanking the CTE teachers for all they do to help kids that may not go to college feel as proud of their diploma as the kids that are going to college. And that was probably the best received slide I threw up there today. Because we understand that there are so many opportunities that kids can have other than going to a four-year college. And I don't know, those kids coming out of the welding program are doing pretty well as far as their financials. I believe some of them are starting 6 figures. So we need to keep expanding our CTE programs. And dual language. We have a dual language program that is happening at Fellsmere, and I don't know if you've noticed what happened at Fellsmere Elementary this year, but they are just coming up like gangbangers. They are like sorry, bad term. I shouldn't use that term. They are doing gangbusters, thank you. So I've been doing too many of these. Dual language program really has seen huge results at Fellsmere Elementary, and I think expanding that program would be really wonderful. Then I do need to talk about the one slide I showed today too, is what can we do for parents to say, what can you do, what's the best thing you can do for teachers this year? Not just bring them a cup of coffee or a coffee mug, is to send respectful students to school.
Yes.
Thank you, Teri. And Thomas.
One thing about Amplify is that the citizens were the ones who made sure that got through. And a lot of teachers have raved about it. But it was the citizens, because HMH was going to be adopted if there wasn't an approval. And so they were like, no, this is not going to happen. HMH was supporting the destruction of our cities in 2020 by endorsing BLM. And so that was really important. Citizens, advocacy. A lot of times when the citizens come to school board meetings, they're absolutely right. One of the interesting things that happens, I believe it's really important, there's a lot of support curriculum in our schools. There's library books, there's media, there's all sorts of things. And it says in our state law, up to 50% of your budget. In the kindergarten area, it's 100% of your budget you can use. And then in some of the elementary, it's like 75%. Curriculum budget can be used to buy this stuff. This is our taxpayer dollars. And so all those library books were bought with our taxpayer dollars, with the pornographic stuff in it. But one thing that happened in all this was, and I love to read, so this really sort of caught my ear. The superintendent said, well, in 2021, at Vero Beach High School, 3,000 students, only 100 books were checked out. That's a pretty low number of people using the library for the purposes of education. And basically they're saying the students are voting with their feet because they don't find anything of interest. So we have to look at these things to help teachers do what they need to do. They are great at what they do. Most teachers are vocational thinkers. They got in this for the passion of serving. And we have to come to the school board with the passion to serve them so they can execute with excellence. And then the students will do the same.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our 1 minute closing statements in the order of Josh, Jackie, Teri, Thomas, and Cindy.
Thank you for coming. What you see is what you get. I find it pretty alarming that there's a significant amount of money that have been donated to these campaigns. I mean, significant amounts of money. And one of the things I want to tell you is I can't be bought. I'm not a politician. I'm just a dad, now a papa of a 4-year-old, and was sitting on the sidelines complaining to my wife about what's going on, what I hear and see, and said, I can't sit back any longer. I have to get involved. As we move forward as a group of people, we have to have a strong education system. Vero, Indian River County, Sebastian can be a great place to be. But 20 years from now, if we're graduating students today that can't do basic fundamental things, we're in trouble. They're going to be relying upon the government and won't be able to do what needs to be done to take care of their families. Vote for me on August 23rd. Josh Post. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Got to get ready for these. So thank you again for listening, for being here, for providing your input even on when we have one-on-ones. I understand the significance of affecting change in this position as school board member. I've had the experience of doing it for the past 4 years, or for almost 4 years, and I'd love your vote so that I can continue that for the next 4 years after November. I would like to let you know that I have lived out my constitutional duty. If you've seen me on the board, you know that I ask the tough questions. I don't rubber stamp everything that the superintendent brings my way, and I'm not afraid to be the downvote on some items that are really values focused. I will compromise on some things, but if they compromise my values, I will not vote against my values and your values, what holds near and dear to all of our hearts. I put the issues, social and political issues, aside and really just think about the students so that the student becomes first, parents' rights first, and
Thank you, Jackie.
thank you.
Thank you. And Teri.
Thank you. I've been an advocate for kids my whole life, and I'll continue to be. I want to see this district continue the rise that we started. We can't keep upsetting the apple cart over and over and over again and expect us to continue this rise. I've been called to serve. I was called to serve when I was asked to be a principal in Avenue Q in Fort Pierce. I was called to serve to do this, and I'm still continue to call to serve. I've taken education finance courses and educational law, so I have that background in order to really understand this book well and to know where we're going to spend every penny, because it's important. When I was a principal, I had a $2 million budget and always spent it well, turned that school around. It was an F school. Now we're responsible for a $361 million budget. That's important. We're the largest employer in this county. We need to make sure we're spending wisely. And we're also thinking about, first of all, every day, safety first. When I walk the campuses, I walked 3 yesterday, I pointed out things immediately to the superintendent that I saw that we have to fix immediately.
Thank you, Teri.
And just an FYI, Jacob Oliva, who's K-12 chancellor, knows me well because I called him about Amplify to help us get that book here.
That's right. And Thomas.
So I believe in excuse me. I was asked by many Indian River County residents to run because of my understanding of proper citizen participation in government, parental rights, taxpayer accountability, and a proactive student discipline. I believe implementing these points will restore the mission of the district to education first. parental rights is the most important aspect of governance that our school board can do to be effective. It makes all of us transparent to the community. There are a lot of things that have happened where transparency wasn't first on the minds of school board members. And thank God there's been one advocate on the board that's always done that. And so that's where I come from, because I think that's most important. If we start to protect the school system from outside political influences and just focus on education, serving our teachers, and serving our students, that's where I'm going to be.
Thank you, Thomas.
So your vote, August 23rd. Thank you very much.
And Cindy.
Thank you again for the opportunity to get to come and speak to all of you. I'm a concerned parent, concerned former classroom teacher in this district, also a taxpayer. I live in Sebastian. I've been attending our school board meetings as a concerned parent and educator for years. When I was still teaching, and I continue to go. I've been to almost every single one except for the last one for the last 3 years. I'm very involved, and I think everyone should be. I think that we need to make sure that our community as a whole is involved, and that's a big part of why I'm running. I have a lot of hats: mom, teacher, employee, taxpayer, and I really want to be the hat with the school board member as well. And I want to finish by saying how grateful I am, because I know that when I move into an area or we have people moving into our area to grow our economy, they always look to the schools first. That's what people do. They want to make sure their school system is good. And so I'm very grateful to the Indian River County Realtors Association for their endorsement, because that means that they respect my views on how our school system should be operated. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you all candidates for participating. That's another one you can check off the list. Only in a handful more, I'm sure. If anybody from the Yacht Club can hear me, thank you very much for having us and allowing us to be here. Everybody, thank you for coming. We're going to have our next meeting right here as our new home on September 2nd, so I hope we can see you there. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.